how to peak for the end of the season. I'm not sure if I totally agree with the whole philosophy of peaking for the end of the season. I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that we don't overdo it in the beginning of the season. That's the reason we recommend to our kids not to cut weight. The high school kids, they're going to lose some weight for the sport of wrestling, obviously, most of them. But don't do that until the last minute. If I'm a 106 pounder and I hold that weight all year, a lot of times the kids, in August, September, they're chomping at the bit for season. And they're, it's good for the coaches to sometimes say, hey guys, we're gonna pace ourselves. I remember years ago at Oklahoma State, we were chomping at the bit, and Bruce said, calm down, we're gonna pace ourselves a little bit. If you guys want to wrestle more live after practice, go ahead. But as a coach, I'm going to progress us slowly. We have 7 months to the NCAA tournament. Let's slow down a little bit. And, sure enough, the team had won the NCAA title that year. And I think that was a big part of it. I've seen individual kids of my own. I'm like, you do not want to go down to weight right now. Cut down to 106 for the certification, then go back up the next weight class. And then that way, come districts, you can go back down, you get that 2 pounds allowance, and you look like a 115-pound kid out there wrestling 106. If you suck down early, you're going to look like a 98-pound kid out there wrestling 106, and your desire to wrestling is less. So, the main thing is for you as an individual to pace yourself, if your coach maybe isn't doing a very good job of that, and for you as a coach to pace the guys as well. There's a pretty famous saying in the sport, in athletics. It just says, the under-trained athlete will outperform the over-trained athlete every single time. And now, sure, we want to be perfectly trained, but that's not always an option. And I have found you can sprint to the finish line and be ready by the end of season. But, if you're running a marathon and you sprinted the first 3 miles and then you paced yourself and then you try to sprint the number 18 through 21 miles to catch up, you don't have a kick left. You ran the race the wrong way, and that's a big part of running a marathon, obviously, is every individual has a different way of pacing the race for themselves according to their strengths and weaknesses and whatnot. But in a marathon, if we're to the very end of the race and you have already hit the wall or you're close, you're basically done. However, someone who said, they might start their kick, I don't know a whole lot about it, maybe the 23-mile mark is where they really start to kind of figure out how they're going to overcome the race. They might start a little earlier than that. So it really is easier to speed up at the end. Slowing down doesn't work because the mind is already and the body's already worn out. So I see overtraining, and weight cutting is a big part of that, but overtraining causes us to have an inability to peak. So as a wrestler and as a coach, it's important that you slow down, and you want to make sure that you're ready for that kick at the end of the season. Just like a track runner, they might start their kick, halfway through the last lap. You can start a little bit sooner if you have to. Start a little bit later if maybe you overran the first part of the race. But once it's overdone, sometimes it can be difficult. So as far as being able to peak for the end of season, it's impossible if you're physically and emotionally worn out. So that's the reason I think it's important for coaches to train their guys smartly, and for you as an individual to pace yourself a little bit. I remember a guy, he was the NCAA champ a couple of times, and one of his teammates was a former wrestler of mine, and this guy, he just started off like a dynamo and had a terrible end of the season. And we were discussing this. I'm like, I told you you're way too amped up. It's a long college season. And he goes, so-and-so, sometimes he seems a little bit lazy. He doesn't even, he never wins any of the sprints, which I don't think this guy really had the ability to win some of the sprints. So I'm not really saying that. But, he had a conversation. He was kind of frustrated at this NCAA champion and how, he thought he was outworking the NCAA champion, which he probably was, but at the end of the year he wasn't. At the end of the year, our guy hated wrestling. He was ready for wrestling to be over, and went from the number 5 ranked guy in the nation down to nothing. And the NCAA champ was the NCAA champ. So I said, he's the old dog. He knows a little bit. He's been through this before. He's probably made the mistake you have. And the coaches are running a program for 50 guys. It's your job to individualize and trust your instincts a little bit and pace yourself. So as far as being able to peak for the end of season, that has much more to do with it than what people think. And I think the number one way we can peak for the end of the season is to get more technical. Let's say you spend 45 minutes just on scoring from a front headlock and getting out of a front headlock. You're not going to throw 32 different moves at them. Every guy in the room at the end of the year has his best 1 or 2 ways to score from a front headlock. His best way to get out. Maybe, okay guys, 15 minutes, you work your number 1 setup to your best leg attack. Okay guys, on your own drill time, you pick your number 1 sticking point when a leg attack finished. When you get to a leg and you can't finish, why is that? What are your opponent doing? Or what are your opponents doing? Let's spend some time individually working these positions. These kids' confidence will soar if they get drill time late in the year or any time of the year. Too often coaches like to be in charge of all the drill time. The kids don't get their own individual time, and they're like, man, I'm just had to work cradles all day because that's what the coach had planned, and I can't get off bottom. I can't clear leg riding. I got to wrestle so-and-so this weekend, and he's ranked in the state, and I almost beat him, but he rode me out the second period, and I want to work this position. So now that kid's frustrated. His confidence is starting to crash. So as a coach, it's good to give your kids on their own individual drill time as long as they're using it wisely. And, I did this last night. I walk around the room and I go, hey, what's the number 1 thing I can help you with? Technically, emotionally, mentally, you let me know because I want to help. And the kids were like, I struggle here. This one kid, he's like, the kids get to my legs and I always try to whizzer. I'm like, no, you stuff the head, align the spine, square your hips, feet wide, chest high, knees off the mat, arch till it hurts. That's our system for defense. You shouldn't be giving him more of an angle when he's on a single leg and pulling him up to a hip block or a whizzer position. And so we drilled that, and he was kind of smiling. Then after practice, another kid, we worked on our wrist lock, and his wrist lock, he was here instead of straightening. And after practice, he goes, hey, I hit 2 wrist locks today on Logan, and I was like, fantastic. And so these kids, and I was kind of smiling when I walked out of practice because they felt like they got better that day. Now, if I just make them do push-ups and all the conditioning stuff, which is important at the end of the year, they wouldn't have felt that confidence. The confidence comes from drill time and skill time and spending a lot of time on your best few techniques that you're going to take to the state tournament and on your biggest weaknesses and your big trouble spots, because those will rear their ugly heads. We call it stomping out fires. If there's a little fire in the backyard and I stomp it out, it's over. If you let it go, it can turn into a forest fire, and it can burn up, half of California. You got to stomp these fires out because they're only going to get worse. So there's some good ideas on how to peak. You might disagree, that's fine. It's just my opinion. So appreciate you checking us out. There's more at purlerwrestling.com, and good luck to you guys this year.